So welcome. We are getting ready for our next session in the AIM Across the Lifespan series, talking about accessible educational materials. All of the sessions that we do today are going to be recorded and archived in the OER Commons. That's Open Educational Resources. We have a repository that is in the Oregon Open Learning Hub and the Accessible Educational Materials Group. So we are building resources that address all of the topics, all of the things. And so these will go there. Our handouts for today were provided by our presenters, and Chandra will share the link to that. And I am pleased to welcome our next presenters. We started with a general conversation about resources for transition. Now we're moving to a more specific transition to vocational rehab and making connections that work. Nathan and Sheila are going to do a better introduction of themselves than I'm going to, but I am so thrilled to welcome you to have this conversation today. Sheila and Nathan, take it away.
Fantastic. Thanks, Deb. Hi, I am Sheila Hoover. I have been a VR, vocational rehabilitation. We'll say the big words, at least at first. VR is what we're usually called. I've been with Oregon VR since December of 1990. And I started actually as a graduate intern for my graduate program in rehabilitation counseling. Was hired as a counselor for the deaf and hard of hearing to start, and I've held several positions and in several locations around the state with vocational rehabilitation. I'm currently working as a operations and policy analyst at the administration unit. I get to do all the fun projects and program development and training and internship coordination and all of that stuff on behalf of Oregon VR. And I also am able to serve on the AEM group with the Department of Ed and CAST and all of the fantastic folks that make that process happen. I have a master's in rehabilitation counseling from Gallaudet University. I have a certificate of advanced graduate study for rehabilitation administration from San Diego State University. I'm a nationally certified rehabilitation counselor. I'm also a nationally certified vocational evaluation specialist. So that's my pedigree. I'm really happy to be here, and I'm looking forward to sharing some info. Nathan, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself before we get going?
Yeah, for sure. So, hi everyone. My name is Nathan Baniqued. I am an occupational therapist here over at Northwest ESD. Prior to becoming an OT, I'm not new to working with individuals with disabilities. For close to 10 years now, I've worked with people with disabilities all across the lifespan. The reason why I'm talking here today is for quite some time, I was working as a job developer, job coach up in Washington State. And I also managed the Ticket to Work program through a nonprofit organization. So I really got to see really what it looked like from transition age all the way to retirement age, where I advocated, for the attainment and retainment of employment for our students and also for our older and middling adult populations.
Fantastic. Thank you. Okay, so basically what we're going to do today is quickly, because we've got limited time and we're going to keep it at a real high level. We're going to talk a little bit about what vocational rehabilitation is, what legislative support we follow, talk a bit about youth services in vocational rehabilitation, and then communication access and and accessible educational materials in the Oregon Department of Human Services, where VR lives in the state organization clusters. So we are part of ODHS, and then we're going to go into, Nathan's going to pick up as perspective from the job developer, job coach, and OT, talking about helping adults to succeed, and then thinking beyond the program length, 22 years plus. All of those extra years of needing to have accessibility in educational materials and other aspects of adult life. We'll have a little bit of Q&A time, and then we're going to wrap up at 11:45. So that's our plan. So go ahead. There we go. So one of the things that Nathan and I talked about just at the beginning, as we started to kind of think about what would go into this presentation, we were talking about why is employment important? What are the benefits? Why would anybody be motivated to seek employment? And here on the slide, there's a number of different reasons. It could be just I need money and benefits so I can live my life. It may be relating to feeling productive and valued, building a foundation to advance goals or plans. My goal continues to be to travel as much as I can, and I can't do that without money. So that's part of the reason why I work. There's also self-determination, being able to decide what their individuals' lives are like by that individual, and making sure that they're able to set and achieve goals. Expanded social networks. I think many of us in this post-COVID era understand the importance of social networks even more strongly than we did before. There's also documented work in addressing the fact that employment addresses physical and mental health. So you feel better, you think better, you're just better able to address the challenges of life if you have work or work activity, whether it's paid or unpaid, in your life. So that's one of the most important pieces. I can go into the next slide, Nathan. Okay, so what is vocational rehabilitation? This is a very high level view, and I'm happy to talk to people or to email folks with a little bit more detail if necessary. But basically, we're an employment program for people with disabilities. We are established through federal law, and we follow federal regulations. Each state has a VR agency, actually each state and territory. There's VR in Guam, there's VR in the Northern Marianas, there's VR in Puerto Rico. So it's not just the contiguous U.S., but anywhere that has VR services they're available to work with individuals with disabilities. Most of the VR counselors, at least in Oregon, and it's relatively, I'll say it's predominantly true for other states. Most folks have master's degrees in rehabilitation counseling, which takes a master's in counseling and then adds an additional component of disability, looking at physical, cognitive, emotional types of disabilities and how they impact the person's ability to go to work, to prepare for work, and to maintain employment. Individualized services are available to individuals across their lifespan, across their career span. So it's not just a matter of having a student who's finishing, whether it's graduating or aging out through the special education program, but additionally, if that person, when they're 30, when they're 40, when they're 50, if they have additional disability related barriers to either preparing for, attaining, maintaining, or advancing in their career, we can continue to be available and to assist them. There is no limit on how many times people can come back and receive VR services. What we look at each time is whether the person meets our eligibility requirements. Quite often the answer is absolutely yes. It is possible to have a disability and not be qualified for VR services, but that just means that the disability is accommodated or doesn't impact the person's employment, at least at this point. So there's a whole process that we go through. If you look at the handouts folder, I put a flyer that we use for public information in both English and Spanish into the handout folder, and there's more information about what our VR process is and that sort of thing. So do check that. We're also a resource for employers. We can help them with recruitment of people with disabilities, accommodations of existing staff who have disabilities. If or somebody hits the lottery and trips that switch and becomes part of the people with disabilities protected class, we can come in and help an employer look at what job functions are, what are essential, can anything be shifted or changed or carved in some other way to make that possible. And then we also help with increasing their staff diversity, which is very critical. We're also a big part of the special education team. We have folks who specialize in youth services, beginning at as early as age 14. And then we've got people who work caseloads with adults who go into, when I was a caseload carrying counselor, I think my oldest client was about 76, I think. So as long as there's disability related barriers to employment and that person is seeking employment, they can apply. Go ahead and move on. Thank you. Okay, quick over federal legislation. Vocational rehabilitation was established in 1920. It was modeled on the Soldiers Rehabilitation Act of 1918, which was put in place to assist soldiers returning home from World War I who had disabilities related to service in the military. It took another couple of years before they went, oh, wait a minute, we've got folks who are non-military, who are civilians and have disabilities that are making it difficult for them to maintain employment. So let's open it up to non-military services as well. There's been a lot of changes and shifts from between 1920 and 1973, but 73 is really a big year for disability legislation. I know you're all familiar with the Rehabilitation Act of 1973 because that's where the term 504 and the term 508 come from. That's referencing specific sections of that act. It was really a civil rights act for people with disabilities. It started to work towards leveling the playing field for folks with disabilities who were seeking employment, who were seeking services for a variety of things. Section 504 basically states that if you receive federal funding, then you must be accessible. You must have everything accessible to folks with disabilities. And that worked in varying degrees of success over the years. But it became pretty clear relatively soon that because it was limited only to federal funding recipients, that there needed to be some parity across the service and community platforms, which led to the Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990. The one that vocational rehabilitation really focuses on is Title I. That's the employment one. So that's kind of the heart of what we do. But we also have responsibility under the other titles, public entities, public transportation, there's a lot of information about public accommodations and making sure that buildings are physically accessible. Telecommunications, Title IV was huge. That really helped spur the development of video interpreting and for deaf and hard of hearing folks, as well as many other technological types of support. Microsoft's accessibility team, they live in that Title IV section. So, and then there were of course miscellaneous provisions. You can Google the ADA if you want. There are ADA centers across the United States that are available to folks who are working within disability, whether it's vocational rehabilitation, if it's secondary education, post-secondary education, or employment. They do a lot of really great work. So I believe the website is ada.org. But if you Google it, the ADA technical assistance, it'll come up. Go ahead and move on to the next slide. Okay, so into more recent history. In 1998, the Workforce Investment Act was passed by Congress, and this is where the one-stop centers were established. The thinking was that there's no wrong door approach. So if somebody comes in and applies for VR services, and they may also need additional services that are disability related, then they can get those services and be referred directly by the person, the door that they go through. So no more, no, that's not what we do. We're not even going to talk about it. It became our responsibility. It in legislation, it was founded. Most of us were doing it anyway, but that folks are able to access social services, and that we as providers are required to help them get connected. VR is a mandated partner in that one-stop system, and that continues in the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, WIOA. The VR program is now living entirely in Title IV of WIOA, and I say WIOA instead of the sounding out the acronym, because our tribal partners have let us know that WIOA, or when you say WIOA, it's very close to a really not good word in some tribal languages. So I've trained myself, WIOA. So I'm just passing that along as well. Some things we learn from our colleagues across the service spectrum is really huge. So now under WIOA, state VR programs are required to expend at least 15% of their annual budget on youth services. So that we're 80-20 funded. So it's 80 federal, 20 in state, and so that together, we are expected to provide, towards youth services. And Oregon has had a really strong youth transition program since 1990. It started, I think, September of 1990. We began a relationship with many school districts across the state, and with the University of Oregon, and for many years, decades actually, up until this past year, we had that system in place. With the advice from our federal partners, we're shifting things, and we're kind of consolidating things and making improvements. So if you are familiar with YTP, if you've heard of that, if you're working in a YTP program, we're shifting, but it's going to be a good shift. Go ahead and move to the next one. Okay, cool. So there are 78 public VR programs in the U.S. District of Columbia and U.S. territories. I already talked about that. There are two formats that VR programs use. In Oregon, we are a general and blind commission, so we're separated. In some states, there's a combined format, so it's just vocational rehabilitation across the board for services, whether it's blind, deaf, orthopedic disabilities, mental health, autism, any of that. It's all in the same. Here in Oregon, VR is under the umbrella of the Department of Human Services, and we are roughly 300 positions across the state, and we serve 30 locations statewide. And travel if there's a need to. We've got smaller offices where they'll be in Bull Pine for 1 or 2 days a week, and then they'll be in Bend the next couple of days. So we're really pretty flexible. We do have a lot of counselors who do have a lot of travel to do, especially in Central and Eastern Oregon and along the coast. But we're one of the smaller programs under the DHS umbrella, but we're lean and mean. For folks who have legal blindness, total blindness, or deaf blindness, they are served through the Oregon Commission for the Blind, who's our sister agency. They have 69 positions in 5 locations, but that's not all employment related. In contrast to what VR does, the commission provides orientation and mobility training, independent living training, as well as employment services. So they do a lot more broad spectrum, but again, related to the limitations that blindness and deaf blindness call. It's really essential. Move to the next one. Okay. things to think about and remember about VR. We are an eligibility program. We are not an entitlement program. This is a big, big change for folks as students move from the education programs into adult services. We have to document disabilities. We look at functional limitations, what causes that individual to have difficulty in preparing for, obtaining, maintaining, or advancing community-based employment. We do focus on community-based employment. Oregon's been very strong in that as well. Other states have not been as strong in their history, but they are moving that way now. Simply having a disability is not enough to be eligible. I have multiple disabilities, but I'm not eligible for VR services because my disabilities are well accommodated. And ideally, that's where we're heading for all of the people with disabilities in the workforce. But it takes time. Services to VR clients are confidential. This is another thing where we run into some bumps when we're moving from the school system into adult services. If a client is 18 years or older and does not have a legal guardian specified, they are considered an adult. So we require the individual to sign releases of information, to determine whether or not parents or others are involved in the work that they do with VR. It's a wide variety of things. We also ask for release of information for the academic program that they are completing or are enrolled in. So we ask for IEPs. We try and get involved in IEP meetings as much as we can. And the plan eventually that is put together in partnership with the individual with this disability and the VR professional is tailored to that individual. It's tailored to that person's current limitations, their current interests, their current needs. So even if Nathan, Deb, and I walked into a VR office, sounds like a really bad joke. If we all walked into a VR office and we had exactly the same disability, our services would be different because we're different people, and our interests and strengths and all of those pieces that go into finding yourself vocationally are individualized. So our services are as well. Go ahead and move to the next one. Okay. The QR code here gives you a link to the youth services resources for partner organizations. I really strongly, support the idea of going and visiting that. There's some great stuff there, including a short 7-minute video on our youth services. It's somewhat dated, but it's still not absolutely archaic. So basically what we look at is job exploration, work-based learning, readiness for employment, self-advocacy, and then post-secondary counseling. We do use evidence-based practices. We have a summer program that is really, really strong, and it helps youth feel engaged, be more engaged, and also to meet their transition services goals. They're kind of working their way, even if the school year is not a year-round one. Go ahead and go to the next. Okay, so how many people are we talking about? We are talking about pre-ETS, which is the ages 14 to 21, pre-employment transition services. We, in 2021-22, which is the most recent year I've got data for, we served 6,300 students and provided almost 20,000 individual services. In the youth transition age, so 16-ish to 21, 1,202 students were served. The average hours at work when they were placed in employment were 24 and a half, 25 and a half. And then their average wage was $14.41 an hour. And that is 2021-22. So we should have data for 22-23 coming relatively soon after the beginning of the year. Go ahead and move to the next one. Okay, so things that are related to AEM in Oregon General VR. The Department of Human Services has a plain language requirement. We also have font requirements for public-facing information. There are very specific fonts that we're able to use. Anything going out to the public, whether it's an individual client or it's a group, but not within ODHS, it must be in 14-point font or bigger and have an 8th grade reading level or less. The idea is to make things very clear, very plain, and very accessible. We have lots of language accessibility supports. We can get materials in languages other than English, get those translated and available. Alternate formats, including Braille and recorded and large print, all of that stuff is available. Website accessibility is something that they're really, really working on, making sure that there's all info on every image, making sure the color contrast is good, fillable forms when possible, basically making sure that folks who have disabilities and use technology are able to interact with everybody, just like the folks who have other disabilities. We also have, since the beginning of the pandemic, have been using Zoom if there is a need for communication assistance, real-time transcription. That's CART. That's the court reporter machine that translates things into captioning. It's verbatim, and it is immediate. It's not the AI transcription that you find in Zoom and in Teams. It's actually a live person doing the transcription. We also have ASL or spoken language interpreting needs, so we use CART for that as well. And then we use Teams for internal meetings unless there's a need for CART or ASL. So basically our philosophy is that we are a launching pad for the student's next phase in life. We collaborate with special education, we collaborate with students and families, we collaborate with other programs that may be involved, could be county DD or the brokerage. There could be any number of people that are working on that student's behalf with that student. And we are just another number that is available to provide support. And again, it's not just the first job out of high school or just early on. It's for the lifespan. So we're really working to get things done well the first time. So eventually that there won't be any need for our services. I kept telling my clients that when I was an active counselor, and he was like, "Work me out of a job, please. That'd be great." So that's where we're headed, but we're taking it one step at a time. Nathan, go ahead.
All righty. Thank you, Sheila, for that overview on VR. I think it's really important for all of us to kind of understand the services that are available to individuals after high school, because as we all know, once high school rolls around and those students are done, supports become and self-advocacy skills become much more important. And I have seen that, I've worked from, those high school students all the way up to 64 years old. And you can really tell who had the support throughout their lifetime.
Yeah.
And I'll touch upon this a little bit again at the end of this PowerPoint. But all right, so when I was coming up with ways in which to kind of talk about, job development, job coaching, as well as employment and building up those skills for students, I was like, what are these different areas of success? So from an OT perspective, these are kind of the domains we kind of look at: social skills, fine motor skills, executive functioning / cognition, community mobility, self-advocacy, and independent living. So all of that might sound like gobbledygook for some of you guys, and it's just like a bunch of jargon. And what does that really look like? So I kind of simplified it a bit. So put another way, this is kind of the things when you want to look towards employment, the way in which you kind of want to see those domains. And, for any teachers here or case managers, these are kind of the things that I, as a job developer and now an OT, look at when it comes to these kids. So the way in which I broke this down was on the job skills. So things like maintaining professional relationships between coworkers, customers, and supervisors, accommodations and equipment needs to succeed in the workplace, or where to go to attain them. So, Sheila and I believe Sarah and Lon talked about this in the previous presentation, but the self-advocacy piece is huge. A lot of the individuals that I worked with, in their late 20s, had no idea what they needed. And this is important for them because they did not have that, they were not able to find employment or retain employment, um, or independently live. So then you also have your hard skills and soft skills. So when it comes to like curriculum development or kind of determining what it is to be working on, depending on your program, depending on your district, and depending on the relationships that you have with different organizations in your community, these are some examples of these hard skills and soft skills. You have things on the hard skills part: data analysis, coding, woodworking, stocking, Microsoft Google Suite. You have other things such as being able to prepare meals, dishwashing. Soft skills, as we all know, is kind of more that organization, the time management, problem solving, the empathy piece, the social communication skills. Then you have those things that kind of are intersected between on-the-job skills and life skills. So that is primarily when I talk about community mobility, that's how to navigate their community. Regardless whether or not they're working or volunteering or even just, wanting to explore the community, getting from place to place, as we all kind of know, since we're all within this field, it's important. It is the gateway to community, is a gateway to an overall better quality of life, as well as how to care for yourself in and out of work. That includes medication management, that includes dressing and showering and making sure that you wake up on time and all of that. So you have those life skills as well. Maintaining social relationships, friends and family, understanding the concept of money management, and bills. You have also your maintaining your social Oh, wow. Huh. I don't know why that was copied over, but you got it. What's up? All right. So I didn't want to just talk at you all, saying that, oh, yes, these are the domains that you need to hit. Now figure it out. I want to provide some ideas in a way that does provide that accessible educational material lens, right? So there are various other ways. And the thing I like about transition, especially in high school and trying to understand what that looks like, especially for those in life skills classrooms or work experience classes, are what can I do to work with my student to prepare them for that transition aged piece in that transition program? Here's one idea. I know that Sarah and Lon talked about a video, a resume, or kind of like a PowerPoint. This is another thing that I did with my clients as well, creating applicant profiles. So especially for students with higher needs or who are nonverbal, one way to build self-advocacy skills is to create a slideshow or a binder that contains information and pictures to describe or even show off their skill sets. And this is what it would look like when it is all said and done. So this is a great example I found on YouTube. I made similar things like this when I was working in that supported employment realm up in Washington State. But bringing it into more of the educational space, this is a great project. If we want to talk about full inclusion and kind of just like really building community within our students, this is something that general education students could be working on as a project. So that's a potential idea. Maybe pitching it to an art class or a videography class or a graphic design class, right? Because when we talk about conclusion, right, what does that really mean? That means that all parts of society are interacting and working together. Some of the best employment positions I have gotten was because the employer and their coworkers almost adopted their student or their applicant. And they felt like they had a community. They were able to get rides, so the community mobility piece was solved. The employer, their supervisor, was very flexible with their job. Um, Overall, I think that this is a great thing, and you don't even need to have fancy video equipment here. You have things like your phone camera, right? And now you have the ability to be able to just type or write things right onto the video, and you can edit your videos right on. It's this is something that's included in all phones. And again, look into this with your art classes, right? Talk to your other teachers. All righty. So here's another one. And I made this template for you also. If you can scan that QR code, essentially this template is a career or work experience planning template for both the week, the months, and the year. I know that one of the things that I've talked to with some teachers is that they have a hard time kind of figuring out, what do I do with my students throughout these months, during the semester, this quarter. So I decided to put upon myself to make a template, and this is an example of that. So one way in which you can use this is to organize instruction based on different jobs or industries. So for example, you can have a day or week based on food service, which can include rotation of sorting silverware, taking meal orders, folding towels, and setting tables. And then the next week could be office work. So I have here Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, different activities of creating a drink cart that one can have in the high school cafeteria so that students can interact with other students, sorting rolling silverware to simulate what it would be working, what it would look like to work in a restaurant, taking inventory, washing dishes, and setting tables. Those are all pretty self-explanatory. But looking at those skills addressed, really narrowing those down to see, what are the hard skills and soft skills we could be developing by planning these out. So here's another one. Another way to look at this is to focus on the skill of focus. So you can have various things like Monday being sorting silverware, Tuesday filing papers, Wednesday is stocking, calendar scheduling on Thursday, and then Friday building sets and puzzles such as like Lego sets or making jigsaw puzzles. Right, that all is feeding in to building up those abilities of organization, sequencing, all of those different great things for employment. And they're also great times to record, your students so that they have their video resumes. Here's another one for partnerships with local organizations like Goodwill or food banks. As I don't know who exactly is on here, we could have all of Oregon here. So I want to make sure that I really hit everyone. One thing is ask if it's possible for students to go through the clock in, clock out process during every shift if they don't already. Trying to get into that routine of, okay, we got to clock in here, make sure that we're staying on time. And that also provides good data, right? To then go back into the IEP and saying like they were able to maintain attendance, X out of X number of shifts. Or facilitate interactions with both peers and staff in the organization. If you have all heard of sheltered workshops, that's something that we want to move away from, right? It's become illegal in many states. And so this is what I'm talking about when we're trying to build inclusive workspaces, right? Again, the staff I have seen of other employment places and volunteer spaces really taking in my applicant and really showing them, what does this look like? And it just leads to an overall understanding and destigmatization that people with disabilities really can work and they're good at it too. And finally, planning class projects for students to work on that may meet a need of an organization. They're not just there to volunteer, right? You want to have them provide actual value, because that then shifts that mindset that we're not doing a charity case here. These are people with lives who want to do something with themselves instead of staying at home, right, and being shut away from the rest of society. So how does this relate to AIM? um, all of this is some form of accessible education material, right? It's a very hands-on, very tactile way, and it's actually one of my favorite populations to be working with as an OT. So again, providing video examples of tasks that need to be done. So that could be a video of a person sorting food bank items so that the individual is able to see a visual model of that task being done, incorporating a variety of games and activities where students work in teams to build those soft skills, using pictures or symbols to act as signposts for workstations. We talked about flexible resume creation. And again, using various adaptive tools that may be available in your work experience or life skills classrooms, because those things, believe it or not, I have seen them in workspaces, and I have seen my clients advocate for that. And with those things, they are able to be a cook, they are able to dishwash, they are able to work for Blue Origin. you know um, I have worked with people from those who have a high school diploma all the way up to those who have a master's degree. This affects everyone. And finally, the biggest message I want to really throw across to you all is to think about the long term. So asking those questions, where do caregivers see their students in 20 plus years? It sucks to think about, but the parents or the caregivers aren't going to be there forever. And this is a hard conversation I've had to have with a lot of the caregivers of my clients. But it's important, because without that, it really starts to spark the conversation of how can we build a community instead of how can we just stay within the family. Our identity also includes our occupation. How many times have you talked to someone and they ask you, what do you do for work? It's part of our society. It's part of what connects us together. Finally, are students and their care partners equipped to navigate social programs like VR? How about understanding medical insurance? That's something that I've had to actually help out my clients with, how to navigate Social Security, what work opportunities or work incentives are there available. Now, you don't need to know all of this, right, as a case manager, but that's why we work as an interprofessional team. And finally, think about this. What would their social life look like without a job or without volunteering? Where do you see them? What do you think they would do? Would they be happy? So think about these things. And I encourage everyone to kind of bring these conversations up with parents, no matter whether they're in ninth grade or all the way up to 22. This should be happening all the time. And so these are some resources here. And that's pretty much the end of the presentation. We have 2 minutes left. Does anyone have any questions for us?
Wow. You two are amazing. Look at you coming in right on time. And it's such great information. Anyone have any questions that they would like to pose? Questions or comments? I like Amy's. Well said. Well said, Nathan.
I will say ONET is a great one that I've used a lot. It provides both median and average incomes for specific jobs. You can just search them up. They're all from the Department of Labor. And they also, if you are a teacher, you can put in a specific thing like a restaurant worker, and it breaks down those skills on what those things could be working on. Job Accommodations Network, Ask Jan, one of my favorites. If you need ideas on what potential work accommodations, specific disability or type of disability needs, Ask Jan is an amazing resource. So, yeah.